You can't be serious, Derek. The words tumbled out before I could even process the document he'd just slapped down in front of me. Divorce papers. We were just hours away from leaving for our dream honeymoon in Bali, and my fiancé of 2 years wanted to call the whole wedding off. I glared up at him, rage boiling inside me. Explain yourself. Now. Derek swallowed, avoiding my searing gaze. It's my parents. They insist on coming with us on the trip, or else they'll make you divorce me? Is that what our relationship means to you? No, Marissa, that's not. Save it. I held up a hand. Blood roared in my ears. After all my efforts navigating his manipulative family, he still bent to their every command. I refuse to spend my honeymoon catering to your overbearing mother's ego. Please try to understand, Derek pleaded. It's just how my family is. Traditional. They feel like they should be included in all major events. I crossed my arms. And you didn't think to mention this sooner? We sent out the invitations months ago. Everything is booked. I know. He slumped down in the nearest chair. I thought if I told you earlier, you'd call the wedding off. Mom insisted I wait until the last second. Cold fury washed over me. So this ambush was strategic. Evelyn deliberately chose our weakest moment to force her demands. Now the coward expected sympathy? I met his watery gaze, anger broiling inside me. How could I have been so stupid to not see through this ruse? He sipped vodka, liquid courage to gaslight me. Behind his pathetic facade hid a spineless mama's boy, drunk on control. My voice dropped to a venomous whisper. Get out. I'm calling this thing off myself. Panic flashed across Derek's face. Marissa, please, we can work through this. He reached for my hand. I recoiled sharply. Don't touch me. It's clear where your priorities lie, and frankly, I refuse to play second fiddle to your lunatic family. He flinched like I'd slapped him across the face. A year ago, that vulnerability would have softened me, but now the gesture only fanned my fury. How many times had his toxic relatives belittled, undermined, and insulted me? I was done being silenced and pushed around. I strode forward until we stood nose to nose. If you had an ounce of integrity, you'd stand up to them instead of hiding behind Mommy's skirt like an infant. My finger jabbed into his chest, punctuating each remark as his eyes bugged with fear. But unfortunately, you were raised to be helpless, weak, codependent. With impeccable timing, his phone rang. Evelyn's smug face flashed on the screen. I spun away before I slapped her image off the table. This ended now. I would not be blindsided again. As I packed my bags, resolve fortified my shaking limbs. If it was war Evelyn wanted, then war she would have. The morning light filtering into my studio provided little warmth as I scrutinized the guest list for our would-be wedding reception. One by one, I mentally cataloged each name based on their level of enmeshment with Evelyn's toxic web of social connections. I reflected bitterly how I once viewed this list as the bonding of my chosen family with Derek's. How naive I'd been. A knock interrupted my brooding. My assistant Josie entered, her arms full of fabric samples for an upcoming client consultation. One look at my expression and her cheerful smile faded. What's wrong? She dropped the swatches on my desk with a soft whump. Did that witch make trouble again? I let out a harsh laugh. That's putting it mildly. Over the next half hour, I recounted the ambush and ensuing fallout. Josie's shock shifted to outrage the more details I shared. That absolute harpy, Josie exploded, crashing her fist on my desk. Model houses and fabric samples jumped. She planned this sabotage from the start, waited until you couldn't back out without losing thousands. I dropped my head in my hands with a groan. I walked straight into their trap. I should have trusted my instincts when his family resisted every wedding plan. Josie clasped my shoulder, her expression solemn. This wasn't your fault. Derek misled you, probably under orders from that Gorgon he calls mother. Anger reignited in my gut. Josie was right. Evelyn orchestrated this pretense of support while plotting my removal once I fully committed. I thought of her smug expression when I asked for input on centerpieces, cake designs, vows. My head jerked upward. The speech! Josie frowned. What speech? I gripped her wrist, mind racing. My bridesmaid speech, where I planned to publicly thank Evelyn for welcoming me into their family. I groaned, envisioning her barely concealed delight. She knew I'd be humiliated when Derek left me at the altar. Josie's eyes narrowed to slits. That heartless witch! I strode toward my mock-ups and fabric samples. A plan was formulating. Evelyn's machinations had provided the perfect ammunition. Now I would deploy it against her. I turned to Josie with new conviction. Help me tear this place apart. We need to examine every wedding-related item with Evelyn's fingerprints. There must be more evidence of her plotting. Josie met my gaze, mirroring my look of dawning comprehension. Together we would expose Evelyn's deceit and render her the social pariah she deserved to be. Derek may have abandoned our partnership, but I had Josie's fierce loyalty, and that meant everything to me now. Let's give that old crone a taste of her own medicine, Josie said through gritted teeth. I squeezed her hand, gratitude and anticipation coursing through me. Game on, Evelyn. Your reckoning is coming. The following weeks passed in a blur of late nights pored over scandalous wedding mementos. Each custom invitation mocked me, Evelyn's fingerprints all over the intricate floral details she insisted complement the lace and chiffon monstrosity of a dress she selected. Like a spider, the cunning woman spun her web slowly, ensnaring me strand by silken strand. Josie became my anchor during this turbulent period. Together we dissected the mountain of wedding debris occupying my studio space, seeking any clue that could aid my vengeance. Bingo! Josie yelled late one Tuesday night. I jerked awake where I had nodded off at my work table, nearly upending my stone-cold coffee. Josie stood near the mock altar, holding a framed photo from Derek's cousin's wedding 2 years prior. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you, she said, but look what I found in the pile of Derek's stuff. I squinted at the image of Derek dancing with a blonde woman, their bodies pressed together suggestively. My gut twisted with anger and vindication. So Derek's wandering eye wasn't a recent development after all. Josie shook her head with disgust. I remember Evelyn boasting this was the event where Derek introduced her to you. Guess she conveniently forgot the part where her darling boy toy got handsy with another woman behind his girlfriend's back. My fists clenched with the urge to hurl something fragile. Instead, I took a deep breath. Have that photo printed and discreetly show a few key people. Let the gossip mill do some work for us. Josie's grin turned wolfish. With pleasure. I know just who to share this with, too. That will get tongues wagging. She tucked the frame under her arm and sauntered out. As the door swung shut, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. The name sapped the momentary satisfaction right out of me. Derek. Speak of the devil. I stared down at the screen, debating between ignoring it and indulging my curiosity. Curiosity won out. Derek. Hey, babe. Mom's still pretty upset about us postponing the wedding. Wants to meet up to clear the air. I scowled. The gall of that woman playing innocent while her spineless son begged me to reconcile with her. Evelyn orchestrated this entire debacle. If anyone owed apologies, it was her. Still, the text presented an opportunity. Perhaps I could covertly gather intel for my brewing plot. And honestly, I craved watching Evelyn squirm when she realized her machinations failed. After some consideration, I typed a response. Me, fine. Meet me tomorrow at our old cafe, just you and me. Leave your mother out of this. Derek began typing immediately, but I silenced my phone and headed home before he could worm his way back into my thoughts further. I needed rest for the performance of a lifetime tomorrow. Evelyn would rue the day she chose me as her adversary. With Josie's help securing damning evidence, I would avenge myself yet. I arrived at the cafe early, surveying the space like a cougar seeking vulnerable prey. Fortunately, the quaint shop was nearly empty, save a few patrons nibbling scones with textbooks or laptops. I selected a small table in the back corner, ideal for monitoring the entrance while remaining inconspicuous. Right on time, the bell above the door chimed. I glimpsed Derek's sandy hair first as he scanned the room. His shoulders sagged with relief, spotting me tucked away. Odd. I expected to see his mother latched onto him despite my explicit request she not attend. Derek approached my table cautiously, as if nearing a hissing viper instead of his ex-fiancée. He cleared his throat. Hey, Marissa. Thanks for agreeing to meet me. I gestured curtly to the seat across from me. Best to get straight to business since he decided to follow my instructions for once. Might as well use the opportunity for intelligence gathering. As Derek settled into his chair, I crossed my arms against my chest as a makeshift shield. His eyes held that familiar puppy dog look I once found so charming. Now it only amplified my disgust. How could I have loved such a feeble coward? Well, I prompted when the silence stretched uncomfortably. You insisted on this little chat, so speak. He winced at my biting tone. Right, I know tensions are high lately with my family. I cut him off with a sharp laugh. Are you seriously trying to blame your mother for ambushing me with divorce papers days before our wedding? I'm aware of her manipulations, but you stood there holding the dagger, Derek. I didn't want to. He held up placating hands to halt my tirade. Mom gave me no choice, said I had to show my loyalty or she'd cut me off. My lip curled with disgust. So it all came down to money then? I leaned forward. Time to poke the viper's nest. Well, you chose, and in doing so revealed exactly where we stood all along. That backstabbing display proved our relationship was a sham. Derek visibly paled. Come on, Marissa, don't say that. I still care deeply for you. His voice dropped. I was just protecting our future. I let out an acidic laugh that burned my throat. Our future? Don't make me laugh. I gripped his chin, relishing his wince. The only future you were protecting was your own, spineless as ever. I shoved his face away and grabbed my bag, resolved to purge this poison from my life forever. His gasps and stammers faded behind me as I strode proudly into my hard-won freedom. I strode out of the cafe with adrenaline pumping through my veins. The confrontation went even better than I imagined. Derek crumbled under the slightest pressure, revealing his spinelessness and Evelyn's vice grip on him. My suspicions were confirmed. Their family orchestrated this sabotage for financial gain, caring nothing for my dreams they eagerly crushed. Well, no more. I refused to waste another minute dwelling on their toxic web of lies. As I rounded the street corner, focused on hailing a taxi, my phone rang loudly. I didn't need to glance at the name flashing across the screen to guess who interrupted my dramatic exit. Likely the sniveling coward wanted the last word to salve his wounded pride. What do you want, Derek? I answered briskly, my tone sharp enough to sever bone. An acidic chuckle answered me instead. Come now, dear, is that any way to speak to your future mother-in-law? I froze in my tracks, knuckles whitening around my phone. Evelyn, I hissed between clenched teeth. To what do I owe the displeasure? Her answering laugh oozed false sympathy. Oh, I just had the most distressing chat with my son. He's absolutely inconsolable after your callous treatment earlier. Red flashed across my vision. I trembled with rage barely contained. Callous? I'm not the one who ambushed my fiance with divorce papers and ridiculous ultimatums days before our wedding. Each word shot out like bullets from a machine gun. If anyone has been callous, deceitful, and manipulative here, it's you. A weighty pause followed my accusations, heavy with unspoken threats. When Evelyn spoke again, her prim voice dripped venom. Clearly this wedding debacle has overwhelmed that dramatic little mind of yours. Let's avoid further unpleasantness for all parties, shall we? The implication stood starkly against her genteel words. Comply or live to regret it. This time I embraced my fury like armor. Here's an idea, I replied, danger lurking beneath my steady tone. Stay out of my life from this moment on. Keep your toxicity away from me and we'll have no issue. I relished the sharp intake of breath through the phone, waited eagerly for her scathing retort. Instead, flat resignation greeted me after a taut minute. I see. Well then. Her icy words sliced the tense silence between us. I wish you luck finding someone willing to tolerate that disrespectful attitude of yours. You'll certainly need it with your deficiencies. I stood trembling on that busy sidewalk long after she disconnected. The final veiled insult echoed in my ears, an ominous portent. But this time I refused to cower before Evelyn's threats. I would have the last word. Squaring my shoulders, I continued onward with purpose, fueling each stride. My taxi waited around the corner, engine rumbling in anticipation. I slid inside, resolve stealing my nerves. Where to, miss? One glance at Derek's desperate stream of texts solidified my intent. The airport, I announced. I'm taking back my life. The tropical heat enveloped me like a heavy wool blanket as I exited the airport. Despite the late hour, thick moisture clung to my skin, an apt metaphor for the drama I hoped to leave behind. I breathed deeply, orienting myself in this foreign environment. The scent of salt and palm trees mingled with exhaust fumes as luggage-toting tourists filed past me to awaiting cars. So different from the carefully cultivated towers of steel and glass I designed, yet intriguing in its chaotic harmony all the same. As I headed toward the taxi queue, my burner phone vibrated, startling me from my contemplative reprieve. I grimaced, expecting another pleading missive from Derek, likely begging me to reconcile after his latest sob session with Mommy Dearest. The coward remained so securely apron-stringed I wagered Evelyn still taste-tested his meals daily. Instead, an unlisted number flashed across the cracked screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Marissa Winters," I stated briskly. After the confrontation with Evelyn, taking risks felt exhilarating instead of terrifying. A throat cleared on the other end. "Marissa, it's Richard Thomas. We met at Derek's firm Christmas party a while back." I racked my brain trying to conjure a face. Flashes of ugly Christmas sweaters and watered-down cocktails surfaced. Derek introduced me to so many of his colleagues that night, few made an impression. Except... "Richard, of course," I exclaimed, snapping my fingers. "You were the only charming person in the lot. How are you?" He chuckled. "I'm well. Listen, I apologize if contacting you seems forward, but I saw your RSVP cancellation and wanted to reach out." I bristled, preparing a frosty retort about gossip chains, but Richard continued sincerely, giving me pause. "Truly sorry if I'm overstepping, but from our conversation at the party, you seemed quite lovely and too mature for Derek's circle." He hesitated before adding gently, "I guess my instincts were right, considering the broken engagement." My defensiveness wavered at his somber tone. Perhaps word spread about Derek's family sabotaging our wedding far and wide if sympathetic colleagues reached out. Their deceit impacting my reputation fueled my next bold move. I smiled slyly. "Richard, no need to apologize for calling. In fact, I'd love to get coffee sometime and... chat." I put slight emphasis on the final word, implying more. He inhaled sharply, clearly not expecting my response, but he recovered smoothly. "Chat, huh? I'd be delighted. Maybe over dinner instead when you're next in town? It's a date." After finalizing plans to meet up in a few weeks, I hung up feeling re-energized. An attractive, successful man sought my company despite the gossip. Already my revenge stirred interest. Whistling to myself, I climbed into the waiting taxi, directing the driver to my oceanside resort. As we lurched into chaotic traffic under swaying palms, I reflected on the remaining loose ends awaiting my return home. But for now, tropical adventure called. And with Richard's intriguing overture, both business and pleasure soon awaited me. Stunning Derek's circles with my quick rebound would deliver the ultimate vengeance. I intended to savor every minute of their downfall, starting now. The weeks apart served me well, bringing much-needed distance and clarity. I channeled my energy into the budding relationship with Richard, now my official boyfriend. He accompanied me to various industry events, stealing Derek's spotlight effortlessly with his charisma and genuinely supportive nature. My reputation not only remained untarnished from the broken engagement, but improved tenfold on Richard's arm. Still, the thirst for vengeance simmered beneath the surface as Evelyn and Derek kept painfully low profiles in avoidance. Their absence from the social scene fueled rumors faster than any coordinated scheme. Josie kept me informed of the choicest gossip tidbits concerning their family's dirty laundry airing. "The vultures are circling," Josie commented one night as we reviewed her intelligence over dinner. "With you AWOL and their circle fractured, people feel emboldened to question Evelyn's authority." I smirked at that, taking a deliberately slow sip of wine, savoring the news. "Perfect. Those frauds deserve every ounce of scrutiny coming their way. What about Derek?" "Oh, he's positively miserable according to office chatter," Josie replied with relish. "Got passed over for some promotion thanks to your little coffee confrontation exposing his weak backbone." My laughter echoed around the table, unleashed and carefree at last. Let Derek drown in the career limbo his mommy dear sentenced him to, chained under her supervision. Served the coward right for casting me aside at her command. Several weeks later, karma came full circle at a benefit gala. I glided into the opulent ballroom on Richard's arm, effortlessly commanding attention in a shimmering A-line gown, exposing just enough skin to make heads turn discreetly. Outwardly cool and collected, despite the RSVP listing, Derek and his parents in attendance, I prepared to deliver a killing blow to their social standing. As we mingled casually amidst tinkling glasses and boisterous laughter, I spotted my targets whispering together in a distant corner. From their huddled postures and darting eyes, They clearly sensed predatory danger, but found themselves unable to escape my trap. I left Richard chatting with a colleague and cut deliberately across the room, 2 flutes of champagne in hand, as I closed in for the attack. My glittering smile remained locked in place as I stepped neatly into their space, just as their urgent whispers died. "Evelyn, darling!" I exclaimed brightly, leaning in to brush her stiff cheek with mine as I extended a champagne glass. "How wonderful to see you." Evelyn's answering smile sharpened into a grimace under her expertly blended makeup. Derek pointedly avoided my gaze beside her, wilting under the heat of my satisfying revenge. "Marissa," Evelyn replied, thin as glass and just as delicate. "What a surprise." Her eyes tracked Richard subtly as he observed our interaction nearby, assessing the new threat. I maintained my dazzling grin, refusing to cede ground. The board was so generous to include me for Table 9's auction item tonight, though I'm certain my date outbid your usual ask. I flashed my eyes coyly toward Richard, watching realization sink Evelyn's painted features. "Yes, well," she faltered uncharacteristically. "I suppose we misjudged your resilience after that unpleasant incident." Derek cringed at the mention, but remained silent. Still spineless as ever then. I almost pitied his misery. Almost. Instead, I channeled that simmering fury into a final, brutal strike. I stepped nearer and dropped my voice. "Clearly you underestimated me, Evelyn dear, attempted to bury me socially and career-wise, but only dug your own grave." I gestured subtly around us where partygoers observed our tense exchange. Rumors abound regarding certain indiscretions and manipulations, all thanks to your bungled schemes. Her eyes narrowed, hard and reflective as glass, but I continued before she uttered the threat teetering behind her lips. "However, seeing as tonight heralds new beginnings, allow me to extend professional courtesy." I allowed frost to permeate my sugary tone. "Stay out of my way permanently, and perhaps I refrain from exposing every excruciating detail of your family's cruelty. Are we clear?" Evelyn's expression soured, no doubt swallowing venom. Through rigid lips she forced out, "Crystal." I crumpled my champagne flute delicately in one hand, savoring her demise. "Excellent. Do give Richard and me some space. We have a charity auction to win. Ta-ta!" I sauntered away after one lingering look at Derek's crestfallen face, riding the ultimate high of sweet revenge. Their reputations smoldered in ruins thanks to my flawless execution. Now, at long last, balance, justice, and freedom were mine.
"Mom, what's that over there?" When I returned home from my parents' house with my daughter, we were met with piles of trash bags in front of the entrance. As we approached, I realized that these bags contained my daughter's and my belongings, carelessly packed as if they were actual trash. Confused, I exclaimed, "What's this? Why is this happening?" My daughter tearfully pulled out her beloved stuffed animal from one of the bags and hugged it tightly. Frustrated, I marched towards the entrance, only to find that the locks had been changed while we were out. It became apparent that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were behind this. Ringing the doorbell and knocking several times yielded no response. "What is this? Isn't it terrible?" I muttered. Upon closer inspection, one of the trash bags had a note that read, "Parasites disappear, never come back." A surge of anger welled up within me, and I couldn't help but express my frustration aloud. "The real parasites are you," I muttered. This was the worst treatment I had ever received from my in-laws in 15 years. Not only me, but making my daughter feel this way too was unbearable. My patience exhausted, boiling with anger, I loaded our belongings into the car, and we returned to my parents' house. "I will never come back to this house again," I declared. "I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to the parasites when their host is gone. My name is Sarah. I am currently 43 years old. I live with my husband, daughter, and my husband's mother and sister. I can't say we live happily. I work from home, but this house is never peaceful. The issue lies with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Diane. They have disliked and ignored me for over 10 years. As my daughter, Tracy, grew up, it bothered me less and less. I mainly work as a personal consultant. I started as a fortune teller, but as my blog became popular, I began receiving more consultations on attracting customers, leading to my current job. I met my husband, Kent, through a friend's introduction when I was training to be a fortune teller. I work in sales at a pharmaceutical company, and I'd also do affiliate marketing as a side job, which is finally starting to take off. Kent gave me enthusiastic advice on attracting customers when I expressed my struggles with fortune telling. Attracted by his kindness, we started dating and got married a year later. At that time, our income wasn't great, but Kent always supported me. I'm so glad I married Kent. I truly felt this way. Living with my in-laws began about a year after I got married. It started when my father-in-law, who had been healthy until then, suddenly passed away. My mother-in-law felt insecure about the future and asked my husband to live with us. We agreed to live together in exchange for her taking care of the household chores. Initially, my mother-in-law welcomed our living together and was happy. I hoped we would get along well, but I was mistaken. 2 months later, she began completely ignoring me, perhaps dissatisfied with me not helping with the housework. Soon, my sister-in-law, Diane, also started ignoring me. I didn't mind being ignored, but the challenging aspect with my mother-in-law was her tendency to involve others. Not only did Diane, my sister-in-law, hear about it, but even neighbors and relatives were informed that my daughter-in-law stays at home, but says she's working, leaving all the housework to me. If I say even a little, she talks back 100-fold, so I just ignore her. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law would suggest to others, "You better not talk to her too. It'll be troublesome." As a result, people around the in-laws' house began giving me only tepid responses to my greetings. I felt isolated, and it became very difficult. Despite my pleas to stop spreading strange rumors, my words were completely ignored. Although my mother-in-law's attitude softened slightly when my daughter Tracy was born 2 years after we started living together, her overall stance towards me hardly changed. However, she was very fond of Tracy, and having her help with household chores and child care was a huge relief as my work became busier. Around the same time, my husband Kent's side business started to struggle, and he seemed unable to adapt to changes in the affiliate marketing market. He approached me saying, "Sarah, can you increase your contribution to the monthly expenses a bit?" I agreed, expressing that my consultations were increasing, and the new methods I implemented were working well. Despite my willingness to collaborate on ways to boost his sales, Kent insisted on handling it independently, saying, "I think I'll try it on my own. I'm really sorry." From the beginning of our marriage, we had agreed that Kent would manage the household finances. Initially, my income was low, so he allowed me to contribute more when my sales increased. I transferred money to Kent based on my monthly earnings, and he provided a fixed amount for living expenses in cash. Initially, I could only contribute $100, but now I could transfer up to $1,000, though not every month. I could contribute more if I dipped into savings. I knew Kent was struggling with his side business, but his pride prevented him from consulting me. He began spending more time at cafes after work, returning home later and later. When Tracy was about 5, Diane got married and moved out. Since she lived nearby, she often brought her son Ricky to our house during the day. When Ricky turned 1, Diane expressed her intention to start a part-time job. My mother-in-law gladly offered to take care of him until the evening. Diane was appreciative, saying, "Thank you, I'm so happy." However, as my mother-in-law began caring for Ricky at home, she became very fond of her grandson and started being cold towards Tracy. When they fought, my mother-in-law would scold Tracy, comparing her unfavorably to Ricky. Over time, Tracy started playing near me and began to dislike my mother-in-law's behavior. I spoke up, saying, "Talk to your mother. Tracy and Ricky are both her grandchildren. She should treat them the same. Tracy is already a big sister in elementary school." However, my mother-in-law's focus shifted, and she approached me saying, "Things are tough at the company right now. We might not get bonuses, so could you contribute a bit more?" Despite the challenges, my blog's client attraction was successful, and I started receiving more consultations as a consultant, earning far more than I did as a fortune teller. When Kent requested additional financial support, I responded, I'm already contributing $2,000 a month. Isn't that enough? Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say, but my salary has decreased and the side business isn't going well. Don't be secretive. We're a couple. We should support each other in tough times. I'm really ashamed. Thank you. Later, the amount I contributed gradually increased, and eventually I was transferring $4,000 a month to Kent. Still not wanting to hurt his pride, I let Kent continue to manage the finances. When Tracy was in 6th grade, Diane came back home with Ricky. It seems Diane got divorced due to her infidelity, but I don't know the details. By this time, Tracy could help around the house, so household chores were divided among each family, being ignored by my mother-in-law, and Diane continued, but it no longer bothered me. It's unfortunate that I couldn't give Tracy her own room when she started middle school, as Diane's return meant we ran out of rooms. One night, while discussing which tutoring school Tracy should attend for middle school, Diane suddenly said, Hey, tutoring is expensive. Why doesn't Tracy study by herself? Could you stop making such comments? I'm paying for the tutoring, so it's none of your business what Sarah's paying. Impossible. You don't earn anything. Kent said he's supporting you. You're just a leech, aren't you? Ha ha, you married him because he has money, right? Exactly. Kent told me not to speak ill of Sarah, who can turn, but that's just shameless. My mind was filled with questions. What does this mean? What has Kent been telling his mother and the others? Kent is the one supporting this house financially. It's about time we put an end to the parasite's lifestyle. I feel bad for Tracy, but if we pay for her tutoring, we won't be able to pay my compensation. Not be able to pay? Are you saying our house is paying for your compensation, Diane? Kent said he would pay for it. You should spend your money on Ricky. I began to understand the deception and felt my anger rising. My husband had always managed our household finances, and my mother-in-law had taken care of the household chores and child care until Tracy grew up. So I thought they knew I was also contributing to the household expenses. Is Kent bearing all the expenses of this house, including your living expenses and the compensation Diane is supposed to pay? Be quiet. It's only natural for a family. You're the only outsider here, not related by blood, and yet you act as if living here is your right. It really makes me angry. I contribute money too. Don't talk back. What you contribute is barely enough for your own food expenses. You hardly have any income, and yet you're so arrogant. I could feel my body trembling with anger. I could see Tracy on the side, looking like she might cry. I knew Kent had a lot of pride, but I never thought it would be this bad. Certainly, in the beginning, Kent was paying for the living expenses and pocket money for my mother-in-law and Diane, but I had started contributing as well, and now we were living on my income. I needed to talk to Kent properly. Around midnight, Kent came home. He was drunk and seemed cheerful. Can we talk? I didn't know you weren't getting any money from your mother or Diane. They said you're covering all the expenses of this house. About that. My bad. It's a matter of pride as a man, you know. When we started living together, I was paying for everything. There wasn't a right moment to say you were also paying, and in front of the family, let me be the eldest son a little, please. Kent, with a light-hearted tone like in a comedy sketch, put his hands together. Oh, that's right. I'm going to Conan this Saturday. I'll be gone for a week. Take care? Conan? Why? I got invited to a seminar in Conan by a friend I'm doing a side business with. I'm going to make it a success, so cheer for me, Sarah. Well, I'm off to sleep. See you tomorrow. My husband lay down on the mat in a cheerful mood and soon started snoring. My anger wouldn't subside, but recently, with Kent coming home late, we hadn't talked much, and I had no idea about this. I thought he was joking while drunk, but on the weekend, Kent really left with a large suitcase. During Kent's absence, I had the freedom to use the car, so I decided to take Tracy back to my parents' house. The next day, a shocking event awaited us. Mom, What is that? When Tracy and I returned from my parents' house, there were piles of trash bags in front of the entrance. Upon closer inspection, these bags contained mine and Tracy's belongings, carelessly packed just like real trash. What is this? Why is this happening? I don't understand. Tracy, crying, pulled out her beloved stuffed animal from the bag and hugged it. Furious, I headed towards the entrance. Huh? Has the lock changed? It seemed that the locks had been changed while we were out. This must be the work of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Diane. I rang the doorbell and knocked several times, but no one came out. What is this? Isn't it terrible? Upon closer inspection, one of the trash bags had a note saying, "Parasites disappear, never come back." I felt a surge of anger from the bottom of my heart. The real parasites are you. I couldn't help but let out a swear word. This was the worst treatment I had ever received from my in-laws in 15 years. Not just me, but making my daughter feel this way too. I finally lost my patience with boiling anger. I loaded the luggage into the car, and we returned to my parents' house. I will never come back to this house again. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to the parasites when their host is gone. When we returned to my parents' house, they were shocked. I hadn't told them about the ignoring from my in-laws, the money issues, and most of all, their attitude towards Tracy. Not wanting to worry them, my parents said, "There's no need to go back to that house. You should claim compensation from them." They cried with anger and told me to stay with them. My mother's words, "You really had it tough," made me cry too. In reality, I had been trying my best all this time. Enough is enough. I finally decided to confront my feelings while staying at my parents' house. I contacted a friend who had introduced me to Kent. She was connected to Kent's side business friends. "Are you doing well? I want to ask you something. Do you know if Kent's friends are currently in Conan, that famous entrepreneur seminar, right? I was invited but wasn't interested, so I declined." "Kent didn't go, did he?" "Yeah, that's right. By the way, I heard Kent quit his job and is now managing a business with his wife. You two must be close." Yes, that's right." Nonchalantly, I replied and hung up immediately. After I called Kent's company, what my friend said was true, and to my surprise, Kent had quit his job 2 years ago. This meant that for the past 2 years, I had been paying almost all of the living expenses for my in-laws. Looking back over the years, I suddenly felt hollow. A week later, I received a laid-back message from Kent saying he was back in the U.S. After continuously ignoring him, I stopped hearing from him altogether. He must have heard the news back home. Expecting persistent contact from Kent, I hired a detective to investigate him. The investigation revealed that Kent, dressed in a suit in the morning, spent his afternoons gambling and evenings at a woman's house. So I asked for an investigation into his infidelity as well. 3 weeks later, Kent called me. It must have been close to his former company's payday, and he was panicking. "Sarah, sorry I couldn't contact you. I'm sorry for what my family did. I heard they kicked you out, and I was thinking, why did it come to this? Really? Did you tell the truth to your mother and Diane?" Kent quickly changed the subject and said something unbelievable. "Let's leave that house and live in a new home, just the 3 of us. I'll cut ties with those who disregard you, Sarah. I'm ready to abandon my mother and Diane, so please come back." Are you really cutting ties with your mother and Diane? Was Kent planning to easily discard them after making them dependent on him? I was disappointed in Kent and his self-centered actions, so I told him, "I'm coming back for now, so leave the door unlocked." Kent seemed delayed at my message. A few days later, I returned to my in-laws' house with Tracy. Kent, his mother, and Diane were there, but Ricky was nowhere to be seen. I was relieved that Ricky didn't have to witness the adults' ugly arguments. When Kent made some remarks, I ignored the displeased pair and took out a divorce form from my bag. I confronted the surprised Kent. "I heard you quit your job without telling me. Since we're supposedly managing a business together, does that mean the $4,000 I've been transferring every month was actually your salary? Kent tried to excuse himself. No, that's not it. I told you the business was in trouble, right? So, I decided to quit before getting fired. Carly, I heard you quit 2 years ago, right? I called your company, and it's still not bankrupt. Kent fell silent. I pressed further. By the way, what role do you play in our joint business management? Are you the accountant? Kent became increasingly uneasy and started sweating. Kent is supporting the whole family, isn't he, Mother? He quit his job. His side business isn't going well. And yet it's a mystery where the money is coming from. I'm leaving, but please continue to get financial support from Kent. My mother-in-law and Diane's faces turned pale and ashen. But the other day on the phone, you were crying and begging to save only yourself, saying you'd cut ties with your mother and sister. Haha, but that won't happen. I'm also discarding Kent here. What do you mean? I don't understand. Kent hasn't been going to work. That's a lie. He leaves in a suit, and Sarah was supporting the household. It's true. Sarah has been paying for everything for years. I'm unemployed now and not doing any side business. We're going to have a hard life because you guys kicked Sarah out. We could have had an easy life without working if you hadn't done anything unnecessary. What do you mean by that? You were planning to abandon us, weren't you? Kent's response ignited the fury of my mother-in-law and Diane. As the three of them caused a commotion, Tracy and I began to take action. I came to pick up some forgotten items. I took a cleaning robot bought within the last 6 months, an expensive microwave favored by my mother-in-law, and a beauty device Diane had gotten from Kent. Wait, that's mine. This is mine since I bought it with my money, or you can pay me back for it. Diane fell silent at my words. Then I searched for and gathered my belongings from their rooms. The belongings they had put out did not include my expensive brand bags and accessories. Why are you taking that too? This is mine. I ignored their complaints and sweet talk. Finally, I dropped a bombshell on Kent. Oh, I forgot. I plan to claim compensation from your mistress, Mary, too. Tell her it's no use running away. What? How do you know about her? I know you went to Conan with Mary recently. Good for you, right? Of course, I have all the evidence of the affair, so no escaping that. No way. You've been deceiving me and having fun for the past 2 years. I'll be claiming compensation for the affair, child support for Tracy, and oh, you were secretly paying Diane's compensation too. I'll be claiming that back as well. As I prepared to leave, my mother-in-law and Diane desperately tried to stop me. I was wrong, Sarah. I'm sorry. We just believed what Ken said. We can't live without you. We'll do anything. Please help us. I can't pay you back for the compensation. I'm sorry too. I apologize for everything. You'll forgive us, right? I couldn't help but laugh at their foolish faces. They finally realized who had been supporting their lifestyle, realizing too late that their non-blood related support was gone. Let's just ignore these people, Mom. Let's go home. Yes, that's right. Kent, you'll be hearing from the lawyers soon. Please take care of it. Leaving a dejected Kent behind, we returned home with the items we had collected. Later, my divorce with Kent was finalized, and I demanded compensation through a lawyer. I received numerous apologies and pleas for reconciliation from my mother-in-law and Diane, but I ignored them all. Surprisingly, there was still some inheritance left from Ken's father. The fact that they had been living off my money without using their own angered me again. However, the inheritance wasn't enough for the compensation, and ultimately, they had to sell the house to make a lump sum payment. Naturally, this included the compensation I had been paying for Diane. After selling the house, I don't know what became of Ken's family. I hope Ken can take care of his family, but ultimately, he will choose his path. I also claimed compensation from Kent's mistress, which led to an unexpected revelation. Through the lawyer, I informed her that Kent was unemployed, and I had been supporting the family. Kent had deceived her, claiming he was an entrepreneur with a successful business. In the end, they broke up after an argument. Tracy and I moved to an apartment, and I was able to give her the room she had longed for. I don't think my 15 years were wasted, but sometimes I wonder if I should have made a decision when I started being ignored. Now, I feel happy that my home is a peaceful place. I'm Lisa, and stepping into that party was the last place I thought my world would turn. There I stood beside Rachel, anticipating some laughter and free drinks. It all changed with a glance from James, his easy smile and hands casually tucked into his jeans. "Who's that?" I nudged Rachel, eyeing him. "That's James," she half shouted over the music. "Went to college with him. Real chill guy. You want to meet him?" "Sure," I shrugged. New faces meant new stories, but I wasn't prepared for the instant connection. James had a way of talking as if I were the only person in the room, and those green eyes didn't hurt either. "So, you like the Rolling Stones?" He caught me eyeing his t-shirt. Vintage band tees were everywhere, but I meant it when I said only someone who really digs good music would wear Mick Jagger on their chest. He laughed. "Are you calling me out or complimenting me?" "Guess you'll never know," I teased back. By the end of the night, we were inseparable, discussing everything from our love for old-school rock to names for our future pets. James got my number and didn't wait 3 days to call. The next morning, we were deep in the what of tomorrow, talking about rings and forever. But forever comes with its own baggage. Meeting the parents was on the horizon, and the icy reception at the dinner table was unexpected. Margaret, James's mom, broke the so-called ice with a sharp question about my job at the hospital. It wasn't polite interest, but a harder appraisal. "Yeah, the county hospital up north," I replied confidently. "How much do they pay for that?" Her eyes were sharp, her tone sharper. James shot me a look, but I decided to be upfront. "Well, James does more than get by," she said, interrupting. "So, about this marriage." It was a punch to the gut. I didn't care about money, but the financial discussion had begun. His dad chimed in, and the tone for our commitment was set, tough, not all sunshine and romance. But it was real, and real was something I could work with. Our wedding was simple, fitting in a matchbox. No fanfare, just him, me, and a couple of signatures. In the beginning, we were a team, tackling life from our small joint command center, his old house. We set up a system, half on everything, shared chores, and even cooking together. There was comfort in the routine, in knowing what to expect when we got home. But reality is a tough customer. 4 months down the line, the teamwork was taking hits. Excuses rolled in, bad days stringing together like a lousy pearl necklace. What was meant to be equal started to weigh heavy on my side. The shared life felt more like a solo gig. 2 weeks of slugging it out on my own, and I finally snapped. I wasn't one to make a fuss, but living like this was unbearable. I confronted James, who walked in with headphones on, oblivious to the mounting tension. "James," I blurted out, unable to hide the annoyance in my tone. "What happened to sharing the load?" He looked at me, genuinely confused or exceptionally skilled at acting. "What are you on about, Lisa?" he asked, pulling off his headphones. "I spent nearly an hour scraping your dried-up yogurt off the coffee table this morning." "It's like living with a toddler," I complained. He just shrugged, a nonchalant gesture as if he didn't have a care in the world. "Chill out, will you? It's just a bit of a mess." "A bit of mess?" I called it quits. I stopped picking up his dirty socks, stopped doing his laundry. It was petty, but I was at my breaking point. Of course, that's when Margaret, his mother, decided to pop in unannounced. The perfect storm. "Look at this place," she said, her nose crinkling as if she found a rotten egg. I tried to keep cool, offered her tea, but she was on the warpath. "James, this is no way for a man to live," she said sternly, eyes fixed on me. "I didn't raise you to be living in a pigsty." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Margaret, it's a 2-person job, and I've been doing it solo." "I'm not his maid. You're his wife," I retorted. "A wife keeps a clean home?" She snapped back, missing the irony that I too had a full-time job. I felt my face flush with anger. And what does a husband do, Margaret? I snapped back. He's the breadwinner, she hollered back, missing the irony again that I too contributed financially. Margaret stormed out, slamming the door, leaving me and James in the rubble of our domestic battlefield. James, knocked down a notch at work, came home that day, dumped his keys like they were made of lead. "They're cutting back," he said, the words hanging heavy. I'm off the management track. Just like that, he decided he wouldn't help with the bills anymore. Suddenly, it was all on me. I banged pots and pans like they owed me money. "Why are you making such a racket?" he asked, picking at his beer label. "Someone's got to pay for those beers," I snapped, "and keep this place looking half decent." The ensuing conversation was like a round in the ring. "You expect me to chip in after a day like today?" he shot back. "Yeah, James," I said, not backing down. "Because I had a cakewalk of a day, right?" He had no comeback for that. Just took another swig. "We had a deal. We share this, remember?" I said, standing in front of the blaring TV. "A deal doesn't hold when things go south," he said, not even looking at me. I stood in front of the screen. "So, what? I'm supposed to just smile and nod and keep the house like some 1950s sitcom, Mom." I glared at him. "You wanted a partnership. Here it is. This is life. Deal with it," he said, thick and toxic words hanging in the air. Ignoring the problem wasn't going to make it vanish. "We're supposed to be in this together, and that means not ditching out when it gets tough," I argued. "I didn't ditch out the job, did I?" he muttered, barely audible over the TV noise. I turned off the TV. "We'll see how long we last, if this is how it's going to be," I said, and silence filled the room, as thick as the dirt I've been cleaning all day. He looked away. I stormed off to bed that night, no more words, none that mattered anyhow. They were all bitter, spat out with more hurt than real heart, but they stuck with me like thorns in my side. The tension in the house was like walking into a wall of ice. Barely a word was passed between us without a sharp edge. James had taken to eating his meals alone, delivered by Margaret with a thud at our door, the plastic containers hitting the wood like the gavel of a judge passing sentence. "So, what are we having tonight?" I asked poker-faced as James marched past me, Margaret's cooking in hand. "Does it matter?" He barely glanced my way. "It's not like you're eating." It was true. I didn't have the stomach for food, not for what was in those containers. It was more than lasagna or stew. It was a heavy dose of rejection served up by Margaret, seeping into every room of the house. Then Granny B called, cheerful and active. I could almost smell her lavender perfume through the phone. A visit from Granny could turn a place upside down. And that's what I sorely needed, a gust of fresh air. "I'm packing my bags, baby girl," she chuckled. But I heard the steel underneath, a resilience that had gotten her through tougher times than this. "I need to see your life." I broached the subject over dinner, a silent affair with the clinking of cutlery replacing conversation. "Granny B wants to visit," I said, dropping the bomb without preamble. James paused mid-bite, his eyes hardening. "Here, stay with us," I nodded, gripping my fork like a lifeline. He shook his head, speaking with his mouth full, forgetting manners existed. "No chance. Margaret wouldn't like it. Since when do we schedule our life around your mother?" The boldness of my words surprised even me. Margaret's voice sliced through from the doorway. "Since it's our house, girl. You just live here." The unfairness choked me like a noose. "Your son and I are supposed to be building a life together, Margaret." She snorted. "A life? You called us a life. Look at you two. I bring him food because someone needs to take care of my boy." James stood up, his chair scraping back like a scream. "And that's how it's going to be. No visits, no changes. It's settled." I looked between them, the mother and son, feeling the outsider tag slapping against my chest. "It's settled because you say so. What about what I want, what I need?" "You need to understand that things are the way they are." James shot back, red flushing his cheeks. "My house, my rules." The ache spread from my heart to my fingertips, but I squared my shoulders. It's also my home, James, or at least it's supposed to be. He had no answer, just the hard line of his jaw, telling me the conversation was over. But nothing was settled. Granny B would come, somehow. I'd make sure of it. For the first time, I wanted the battleground. If they wouldn't budge, neither would I. There was fight in me yet, and the freeze in the house would need my fire to thaw it, whether they liked it or not. For the third month in a row, James did not contribute his share to our family budget. I was carrying everything, the house, the groceries, and even his damn beer. We had a fight, the last straw. James and I stood facing each other, our words sharp enough to slice through steel. The room felt smaller as the tension grew, air thick with resentment saved up from months of silent battles and unspoken words. "I don't want you as my wife," James said, his voice dripping with finality, signaling the end of everything. It didn't come out as a shout. That might have been better. A shout I could have responded to with fury. Instead, it was a low hiss, a deflating tire's last breath, leaving behind silence that echoed louder than any scream. "I don't want to be where I'm not wanted," I countered with as much steadiness as I could muster, despite the tremor within. He didn't stop me as I started to pack my bags. Each piece of clothing folded felt like a piece of the life we'd built being tucked away, rendered insignificant. I headed to the door, my suitcase a loyal companion trailing behind me. James was still standing in the center of the chaos, the eye of the storm that had hit us over and over until we'd broken into scattered pieces beyond collection. He didn't move, didn't try to stop me. The door closed with a click, much too gentle for the ending it represented. Outside, Granny B was in her old dependable car that smelled of leather and peppermint. Leaning over to open the passenger door, I heaved my suitcase into the back and slid in beside her without a word. "All set, dear?" Granny asked, her eyes soft but her voice strong, a rock in a swirling sea. "Yeah, I'm set," I mumbled, buckling the seatbelt over the hollow feeling in my chest. Granny B didn't start the car right away. "Heck of a fool," she said flatly, adding an expletive that would have made a sailor blush. I choked out a strange chuckle. "Well, it's true." She finally turned the key in the ignition, the engine rumbling to life reassuringly. "You're worth 10 of him, 15 even." She backed out, and we started towards the new apartment. I didn't reply. Instead, I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, watching the landscape blur the same way my thoughts were a jumble of memories and pain. Granny B didn't push with questions or platitudes. She just drove, every now and then muttering something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like curses aimed at James. The cozy rented apartment was in a normal neighborhood, a place where you could blend in and lick your wounds in peace. As Granny hauled my bag out of the car with surprising strength, I unlocked the door to the unknown. "Well," Granny said, clapping her hands together, "time to rebuild, kiddo. You've got a life to claim, and that sorry excuse for a man to forget." I nodded, feeling the very first flutter of something like hope in my chest. Breaking points, I realized, weren't just about endings. They were about beginnings, too. Messy, painful, but real. First starts didn't erase the past, but they gave you a canvas to create something new, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what I needed. Granny B was sitting on my threadbare couch, her hands clasped over her knee, bouncing with what seemed like contained energy. Who knew that beneath that floral dress and the wrinkles was a woman with the heart of a Wall Street hustler? "So, you're telling me all the dough I sent you for your meds and stuff, you've been playing the market with it?" I stared at her in disbelief. Granny B chuckled and winked. "Honey, you think I'd let your hard-earned cash rot under a mattress? No way. I've been growing it bit by bit." It felt unreal. I crunched the divorce papers in my hand, knowing that what Granny B had just told me was going to flip the script in a major way. James and Margaret, the perfect couple from next door, agreed to meet us one last time, probably thinking they could offer me some friendly advice on starting over. Margaret opened the door with all fake smiles. "Well, if it isn't the soon-to-be single lady, come in. We were just talking about you." James sat at the dining table, smirking without a care in the world. Good of you to come by. We need to talk about the neighborhood now that you'll probably be moving somewhere more, affordable. I clenched my jaw, but remembered Granny's news. I needed this, actually, James. I won't be going anywhere, Granny B piped up. She's got a juicy bit of news. Tell 'em, hun. I enjoyed the suspense, stretching their faces tight. Turns out, I got a little nest egg waiting for me. Granny's been smart with the money. James laughed harsh and loud. What, did you win the lottery or something, Granny B? Granny grinned, sharp as a tack. Better. I turned her spare change into a cool 2 million. The smiles fell off James and Margaret's faces like overripe fruit. 2 million. Margaret's voice came out strangled. Yep, and I don't plan to spend it on this neighborhood. My words felt heavy as I watched their painted-on warmth crumble. Granny slapped a hand on her thigh, triumphant. Ain't that something? Just when you think life's kicked you, it decides to kiss you instead. James started babbling something about how half of this money belongs to him. I burst out laughing, reminding him of the prenuptial agreement I had signed. At this moment, his mother would probably like to go back 6 months to destroy this paper. James and Margaret sat in silence, looking at us with puppy dog eyes. I couldn't help but relish the irony. We didn't linger much longer. There was nothing left to say. As we walked out, Granny B draped an arm around my shoulders. So what's first on the millionaire to-do list? She asked, squeezing me tight. First, I'm getting an ice cream, a big one with all the fixings. I said, the future suddenly bright and wide open. Granny let out a hearty laugh, the sound mingling with the promise of an unseen fortune, now seen and closer than ever. The phone rang again. I was pretty sure it was James trying his luck once more, but this time it went straight to voicemail. I had stuff to sort out and no desire to entertain that mess. I heaved a sigh, looking around my cramped apartment cluttered with memories, too many of them pinned to James and a shadow that loomed like a bad smell. Grandma, with her sharp eyes and a non-nonsense attitude, was right as rain. Why do you even keep that thing on? Grandma gestured at the phone with a scoff, busy shuffling through a pile of real estate listings. I shrugged and tossed the phone on the couch. Guess I'm too soft, squishy as an overripe tomato, she snorted. We need to get moving. I don't want James or his mama knocking on our door trying to weasel back into our lives when we've barely shucked him off. I know, Grams. Thanks. I flashed her a grateful look. So, where to? She slapped a listing onto the kitchen table. It was circled and bold. Here, 2 bedrooms, cleaner air, away from unwanted pests. I skimmed the details. Looks decent, Grams. Any pizza joints nearby. The next day dawned fresh. We were off, the apartment ad in hand, and a skipping grandma step. The listing agent met us at the property, all smiles and slicked back hair reeking of too much aftershave. Welcome, ladies. He extended his hand right at Grandma. She eyed it like it was a dead fish, but shook it all the same. Cut to the chase, hot shot. We're not here for pleasantries. I bit back a laugh as the agent's smile twitched. Of course, of course. He quickly unlocked the door. This way, please. The place was a gem compared to where we were. Good light, clean floors, and the air didn't hold any of James's cologne. Grandma handled it like she was born in a market stall. The price dropped. Terms changed. By the time we walked out, the agent looked 2 inches shorter. The move went smooth. Neighbors were quick to say hi, a couple of them inviting us over for beers and a barbecue. They asked about my story, but I kept it simple. I was done letting my past hitch a ride. The new place shaped up nice. I continued to work as a nurse, and Grandma found her corner for knitting and gossiping with Mrs. Ham for next door, who had more sass packed in her tiny frame than anyone I'd ever met. One evening, I grabbed a pizza from the new joint, of course, and headed home. As I flipped open the box, the steam carried that cheesy aroma up, and I couldn't help but smile. So we settled in, me and Grandma, our little team, the taste of fresh starts and thick crust pizza in the air, laughter from the neighbor's yard spilling in through our open window, and a sense of peace finally making itself at home. James and his empty promises faded into the background noise, just like the buzz of the city we'd left behind. I was looking forward, and the view was pretty damn good. I'm Maria Dalton, about to turn 27 this year, and I've been happily married for 5 years. My son, Martin, just celebrated his 4th birthday. Initially, I worked full-time after tying the knot, but now I balance part-time work at the same company. My husband, Kevin, is 30 years old, 3 years my senior. Our journey from dating to marriage was initiated by Kevin's passionate advances, but post-marriage, I observed a shift in his demeanor towards a more domineering side. Kevin has a 20-year-old sister named Jane Dalton, and their age gap seems to contribute to a somewhat indulgent relationship on Kevin's part. Before marriage, I didn't mind Jane's frequent visits and assumed they got along well. However, after tying the knot, I started noticing changes in her behavior. Jane often drops by unannounced, at any time, and expects to be served without ever bringing a token of appreciation. Kevin, rather than addressing the situation, expects me to accommodate her demands. Jane acts as though I'm invisible, addressing only Kevin with a casual "brother, I'm here again." Despite not preparing for an additional guest, I end up serving dinner to Jane. Kevin, instead of understanding, blames me aloud, insisting I should have been more considerate. Despite Jane's verbal apologies, it's evident she relishes Kevin's preferential treatment. Left with leftovers, I prepare my own meal while Kevin and Jane continue their chat on the sofa, leaving the dining table messy. They never acknowledge Martin or me, treating us more like hired help than family. One evening, as I'm about to take a bath with Martin, Kevin interrupts, loudly instructing me to buy a cake for Jane. Despite it being late, Jane insists on having it immediately. Kevin blames me for delaying, and, feeling compelled, I reluctantly head to the cake shop with Martin in tow. Overhearing their conversation, I learn they're criticizing me for being inconsiderate and questioning the decision to marry me. Meanwhile, Martin, though unable to grasp the words, senses tension in our relationship. Suppressing my emotions, I ask him about his cake preference, and he cheerfully requests one with lots of fruits. Our trip to the cake shop was filled with discussions about cakes, momentarily pushing aside Kevin's earlier words. Martin and I arrived just before closing time, fortunately finding the cake Jane desired. We purchased 2 cakes, including the fruit-loaded one Martin wanted. Back home, I served the cakes to Jane and Kevin, then prepared Martin's cake and headed to the dining room. The moment I placed it in front of Martin, Jane pointed and expressed her desire for that cake. Before I could react, Kevin moved Martin's chosen cake in front of Jane, disregarding Martin's protests. Kevin justified his action, claiming he bought the cake with his earnings and had the right to choose for Martin. Unable to contain my emotions any longer, I voiced my dissatisfaction. In response, Kevin threatened with divorce. Martin, who had stopped crying, anxiously held my hand and then, after some thought, said, "Mom, I'd also love cake with strawberries on it. Yes, it's really delicious." He mentioned this while eating a cake initially wanted by Jane. Feeling that Martin was enduring too much, I lifted his cake plate when I saw Jane reaching for it. I took Martin to the next room so he could enjoy his cake in peace. Kevin apologized to Jane, claiming he was sorry for being stingy. Despite wanting to retort, I held back for Martin's sake. Watching Martin innocently enjoy his cake was a heartwarming sight. After finishing the cake, we decided to have a late bath and sleep in Martin's bed. The next morning, I discovered Jane had already left. As I prepared breakfast, I heard Martin crying. Shockingly, his piggy bank, a gift from my father, was broken, and the saved money was gone. Martin, who always said goodnight to the piggy bank, was left heartbroken. When I questioned Kevin about it, he casually mentioned that Jane needed some money, so she took it from the piggy bank. Holding a crying and shaken Martin, I felt his pain so acutely that I cried with him. It was painful to witness Kevin prioritizing and caring for his sister more than our son. Expressing my anger and sadness, I confronted Kevin, breaking my usual silence on arguments in front of Martin. Kevin, without a word, went to the bedroom and returned with something shocking in hand: divorce papers. I discovered the hidden divorce papers that Kevin had tucked away somewhere I didn't know. In a sudden burst, he confronted me, shoving the papers at me before storming out of the house with a loud bang. Martin, who had never cried over the issues with Kevin and Jane, seemed to have reached his limit, crying since last night. Unable to bear seeing Martin so hurt, I suggested skipping daycare for the day, and he happily agreed with a loud yes, showing a faint smile. We spent the day playing and bonding, with Martin bringing a picture book from the shelf, sitting on my lap, and happily remarking, "The teacher at the nursery today was Mama, right? He looks like an angel." His little heart seemed filled with patience, and I decided to make the day special by taking a day off from work. Despite causing potential trouble at my workplace, they kindly understood the situation and granted me a day off. In the morning, we visited the park, played hide and seek, and had fun in the sandbox and on the slide. When we returned home for lunch, Martin appeared sleepy, usually napping by himself, but today he fell asleep on my lap like when he was a baby. Though I initially thought of doing household chores during his nap, I decided that today was special. Instead, I allowed myself to be healed by his peaceful sleeping face and gentle breathing. However, my serene moment was abruptly interrupted by a noise from the entrance, indicating the front door had opened. As it wasn't Kevin's usual time to come home, I became suspicious and quickly hid in the bedroom closet, clutching Martin. A voice echoed through the house, and to my surprise, it was Jane. Trembling with fear, I listened as she searched for something, expressing frustration over not finding it. Jane then made a phone call, mentioning Kevin and discussing their unsuccessful search. After hearing her lock the front door and leave, I put Martin to bed and contemplated the strange events. I couldn't comprehend why Jane had entered the house and what they were looking for. Suddenly, Kevin seemed like a stranger, and I felt a mix of disgust and fear towards him. Swiftly packing essentials for Martin and myself, we headed to the station and took a train to my parents' house. Fortunately, their home was nearby, just 2 stations away. Although I hadn't contacted them beforehand, my parents sensed something from my expression and welcomed us without asking questions. I shared the entire ordeal with them, including my fear of staying at our house due to Kevin and Jane's actions. Upon hearing my mother's suggestion that Jane might have been looking for my belongings, possibly cash cards, I recalled my past experience as a successful CEO in the handmade goods industry. I had entrusted the company to friends when I decided to prioritize raising my child after getting married. Although I still worked part-time and communicated with the company from home, Kevin was unaware that I was still the CEO. I discovered the hidden divorce papers that Kevin had tucked away, suspecting that he thought I had a decent amount of savings. While I've mentioned to him that I still receive some assistance from the company, I've deliberately kept the details about being the CEO and my savings private. This secrecy stems from realizing early in our marriage that Kevin struggles with managing money and tends to spend everything he earns. Kevin, at first, provided only $200 a month for food expenses and even suggested I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. However, with the financial strain of raising Martin and only $200 for food, I never agreed to be a full-time housewife. Eventually, he reluctantly allowed me to work part-time, and to ensure I wouldn't consider divorce, he had me sign a post-marital property waiver through a lawyer. Since Martin's birth, I used my savings for his nursery fees and clothes, as I've only received $200 for food. I've never asked Kevin for additional funds beyond the food budget, leading him to believe I have savings. Considering Jane's apparent need for money and Kevin's perception of my financial situation, they might be searching for my cash cards. I have a separate savings account dedicated to Martin, with a portion of my salary directly deposited into it each month. Despite their search, they won't find the cash cards, as I always carry my valuables. However, there's still an unsettling issue. Jane might be entering our house even when we're not there, and Kevin may be allowing it. Following my father's advice, I decided to store my valuables, including the cash cards, in my parents' safe. As I pondered their need for money, Martin approached my father, crying over his broken piggy bank and the shattered promise of saving up. My father, angered by Martin's story, vowed to call Kevin. My mother suggested finding out their purpose calmly, as Kevin's mention of divorce might shift blame to us, making the divorce more favorable for him. To ascertain their purpose, I decided to record their conversation, consulting a lawyer who was a friend of my father's. Returning home, I began cooking dinner, keeping my phone screen down to record secretly. Kevin arrived home, surprising me by immediately asking about my cash cards. When I questioned him, he gave vague answers, attempting to deceive me. When I remained silent, Kevin grew agitated and demanded all my part-time money for his sister. Refusing, I explained it was from Martin's savings. In response, he angrily pushed the signed divorce papers toward me, declaring that I was living off his money and didn't need to save for Martin. He even uttered words implying he valued Jane more than our son. Hearing this, I stopped preparing the meal, put the divorce papers in my bag, took Martin's hand, and headed for the door. Kevin, in a loud voice, declared his serious intent for divorce, instructing me never to come back. I responded by stating I wouldn't return to a house where a stranger could come and go freely. After leaving, I received numerous messages and calls from Kevin, which I ignored. Turning off my phone, I sought refuge at my parents' house, sharing the recording and divorce papers with them. Although I confessed to having no love or affection for Kevin, I expressed concern for Martin. My parents advised me to do as I pleased, acknowledging the potential emotional impact on Martin if a divorce were to occur. While grappling with the decision to divorce Kevin, Martin expressed his hunger. My mother, seeing my distress, kindly made him hamburgers, his favorite dish. Overwhelmed with emotions, tears welled up in my eyes as my mother told Martin with a warm smile that she prepared the hamburgers so that he and I could visit whenever we wanted. Taking a bite, Martin exclaimed with joy, praising Grandma's hamburgers and expressing a desire to eat them every day. I responded, saying it's because the hamburger contains the love I have for him, and he, in a touching gesture, took a big bite and offered it to me. Moved by Martin's kindness, my tears couldn't be held back, and even though I tried to stop them, they persisted. My father, noticing Martin's concern, reassured him that my tears were of happiness, not sadness. Hearing this, Martin, in a moment of understanding, hugged me, and my father's eyes turned bright red. Realizing the blessing of being with family, I remarked to Martin that family is precious. Surprised, he questioned if Dad had mentioned that only Jane was family. My father gently confirmed it, but then asked Martin if he wanted to live with them as family. With a laugh, Martin happily agreed, making everyone smile naturally. Despite contemplating divorce, the meal felt so happy that I finally decided to part ways with Kevin. I planned to inform Martin about it, and even though discussing it weighed heavily on my heart, Martin seemed to grasp the situation. Happily, he expressed the desire to live as a family, embracing the pet dog and calling him his younger brother despite the dog being older. Preparations for the divorce began, starting with contacting a lawyer who was a friend of my father. The next day, we formalized the contract, and my father and Martin shared comforting laughter while I laid in bed, reminiscing about my childhood. The following day, upon checking my smartphone, I found over 200 calls and messages from Kevin, showcasing his emotional instability. Exhausted, I turned off my phone, and with the lawyer's assistance, we explained the situation to my parents. Jane had accumulated significant debt from a casino and shopping addiction, and Kevin acted as her guarantor, planning to use my savings. The lawyer confirmed that the divorce papers had already been submitted, and Kevin sobbed upon realizing it was finalized. Despite expecting disagreements about child support, he signed a pledge to pay $340 to Martin every month. In a subsequent call from Kevin, his tone lacked aggression, and he calmly admitted to financial manipulation and explained his complex feelings toward Jane. I firmly asserted my decision not to reconsider and heard his faint sobbing before he wished me happiness and hung up. Remaining strong until the end, I discussed future plans with my parents and decided to stay with them until Martin grows up. I resumed my role as a company president and later learned that Kevin and Jane had informed their parents about the divorce and debt, resulting in disownement. Today, I find happiness being with my family. People like you, with no job and a limited education, are not welcome in this household. With those words, my mother-in-law poured scalding water on me. It's hot, please stop. I involuntarily screamed, shocked by her bizarre behavior. Pouring boiling water on anyone is inexcusable. Fortunately, I suffered no burns, but it could have been a disaster. I couldn't believe my mother-in-law would resort to such extremes. Moreover, it wasn't me but my husband who was unemployed. A growing anger towards my mother-in-law's attitude surged within me. Enough is enough. If she's gone this far, I'll do as she wishes. Understood. If you insist, I have no choice. I'll leave this house, I declared. Finally, you're leaving. That makes things easier for me. My mother-in-law expressed joy, far from being remorseful. I no longer wanted to stay in such a hostile environment. I promptly packed my things and returned to my parents' home. My mother-in-law didn't know that my husband, Raffle, was unemployed or that I had been supporting the household finances. In fact, since quitting my job, I had started trading stocks and was earning about $30,000 a month. Even if I was driven out of her house, I could still live on my own without any issues. I wouldn't have any qualms being on my own. Even if she came to me in tears, struggling with living expenses, I would never lend a hand. She should regret kicking me out like this. I had married Raphael about 2 years ago. We were from the same university and had been dating since then. Both of us, graduates of the economics department, aspired to work in finance and managed to secure jobs at different brokerage companies after graduation. Despite our busy days, we maintained our relationship. 3 years later, Raphael proposed. Julia, I will definitely make you happy. Marry me. Believing that I could be happy with Raphael, I accepted. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. We decided to get married, thinking we could build a happy family together. However, Raphael then dropped an unexpected bomb. Hey, Julia, would you quit your job and live with me at my parents' house? What? I don't mind quitting my job, but we're newlyweds. I'd like to live with just the two of us. I'm just worried about leaving my mother alone. I'll make sure it won't be a burden to you. Raphael's father had passed away when he was in middle school, and since then he had lived with his mother. Being an only child, Raphael was concerned about her. Understanding his feelings, I agreed. Okay, I'll live with you. 2 weeks later, we moved into Raphael's family home. My mother-in-law, now able to live with Raphael, initially greeted us with a pleased expression. However, as soon as she looked at me, her expression clouded. She stared at me coldly, making it painfully clear that I was not welcomed. It doesn't matter. You didn't have to come here. What did I mishear? I thought I heard my mother-in-law muttering something under her breath, but I couldn't make it out clearly. I smiled and brushed it off. At this point, I began to feel a bit anxious about living with her. However, the day passed without any particular issues. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my mother-in-law yelling at me. Are you still sleeping? Hurry up and prepare breakfast. When I looked at the clock by my bed, it was still before dawn, around 4:00 a.m., and it was still dark outside. I was surprised that she would demand breakfast so early. Why so early? Don't just laze around because you're not working. My mother-in-law scolded me, still groggy from sleep. I thought it was way too early in the morning, but I couldn't argue back and started preparing breakfast. Even while preparing breakfast, my mother-in-law kept berating me. Hurry up! Why does it take you so long? You're so slow. After 30 minutes, breakfast was finally ready. I'm sorry for making you wait. You finally finished. Can't you make it faster? My mother-in-law complained again. I wanted to retort that it was physically impossible to do it any faster, but I just smiled and shrugged it off. What is this? This soup is too salty. What is it? I don't think it's that salty. What are you saying? There's something wrong with my taste? Are you trying to kill me quickly by feeding me such salty meals? I never thought or intended such a thing. What is she talking about, and why is she so harsh on me? Curious, I mustered the courage to ask my mother-in-law. Why are you so harsh on me? What are you talking about? I don't think I'm being harsh. Or are you trying to make me the bad guy? No, that's not what I mean. I was overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's pressure and couldn't talk back. Finish eating. Start cleaning. After that, there's laundry to do, so there's no time to rest. Since then, every day, I was continually harassed by my mother-in-law, wearing me down both mentally and physically. While I was cleaning, she would say things like, "You missed the dust in the corner." When I was doing laundry, she'd complain, "There's still a stain." A month after starting to live with her, I felt like I was going to break. So I talked to Raphael about it. "It's about your mother. She's been saying mean things to me every day, and it's hard. Could you please tell her not to say such things?" But Raphael showed no reaction. I was momentarily irritated by Raphael's lack of response. But then I noticed something strange about him. He was pale, as if he had something important to say. What's wrong? Did something happen? When I asked, Raphael hesitantly began to speak. Actually, I've been fired from the company. What is this, some kind of joke? I was speechless, unable to comprehend. There was a downsizing at the company, and I got laid off, according to Raphael. Due to recent economic downturns, the company's profits had plummeted, leading to unavoidable large-scale layoffs. So you'll be unemployed from tomorrow. Well, I can work for one more month after receiving the notice of dismissal. But after that, fortunately, I had been using my knowledge from my time at the securities company to trade stocks. Although I struggled at first, I was now earning about $30,000 a month, so we weren't struggling financially. I was comforting Raphael and had forgotten about all the harassment from my mother-in-law. From the next day onwards, I endured my mother-in-law's harsh treatments as Raphael lost his job. Feeling the need to be strong and support him, I continued to endure the situation. A month passed, and Raphael was officially laid off and became unemployed. He started looking for a job initially, but gradually he began to spend most of his time at home, making excuses. "Shouldn't you start looking for a job more seriously?" I suggested. "Yeah, I'm looking, but it's hard to find a good company that will suit me," Raphael replied, seemingly having no intention of actively seeking new employment. Reluctantly, I continued to support our household. As time passed, the harassment from my mother-in-law intensified, and I grew increasingly exhausted. Initially, I thought I had to endure it because Raphael was unemployed, but I no longer felt that way. I spent my days feeling listless. One day, Raphael unusually went out in the morning. Perhaps he had finally started to seriously look for a job. After seeing him off, I started cleaning as usual. "Make sure it's clean. Do it properly." My mother-in-law sipped coffee on the living room sofa, hurling sarcasm at me. Fed up, I ignored her. Suddenly, she threw a tantrum and yelled at me. "How dare you ignore me? You're just a mere daughter-in-law. You don't even have a job." Ignoring her, I continued cleaning. She grew angrier and confronted me. "Still ignoring me? Unemployed and uneducated people like you should leave this house." She yelled and then poured boiling water on me, the hot water she had prepared for her coffee. "It's hot? Please stop." I screamed involuntarily at her sudden action. Thankfully, the water wasn't super boiling hot, so I didn't suffer any burns, but it could have been a disaster. Finally reacting, she said, "This is what I've been saying. If you're not working, leave this house." She smirked as she spoke. Fed up with her behavior, I had no choice but to agree to her demand. "All right, I'll leave." "Good. That makes things easier. Leave quickly." I quickly packed my things and decided to leave that day. I no longer wanted to spend another second in that house. I left, heading straight to my parents' home. Upon arrival, my parents were surprised by the sudden visit, but welcomed me warmly. I waited for a call from Raphael, but there was neither a phone call nor a message. Feeling a bit lonely, I decided not to contact him until he reached out. A month passed since I returned to my parents' house, but there was still no contact from Raphael. My feelings for him faded, and I started considering divorce. One early morning, the doorbell at my parents' house rang. On the monitor, I saw, to my surprise, Raphael and my mother-in-law. What now, after all this time? I thought. Yes, what can I do for you? I've forgiven you. Now come back home quickly, she yelled through the intercom as usual. Forgiving me? What's she talking about? I appreciated her words, but I hadn't done anything that required forgiveness from her. After telling her that, I ended the intercom call, boiling with anger at my mother-in-law's attitude. However, they were persistent, banging on the front door violently. Don't just hang up on me. Come on, let's go back, my mother-in-law yelled. Considering the noise they were making could become a hassle to the neighborhood, I reluctantly opened the door, inviting my mother-in-law and Raphael inside after seating them on the sofa in the living room. I inquired about their unexpected visit, wondering why they were both there all of a sudden. It was my mother-in-law who had insisted that I leave, and now she was telling me to come back. The situation was perplexing, and I couldn't make any sense of it. You're the one who told me to leave. There's no way I can go back now, I asserted. My mother-in-law responded with frustration, accusing me of childish behavior and claiming to have forgiven me. She insisted that I return and stay in her house, even stating that she'd let me, an unemployed and uneducated person, stay there. But I'm not the unemployed one, it's Raphael. And if I go back, they'll take advantage of me every day. I might not be working, but what about your son, huh? I retorted. Raphael seemed surprised at this revelation. My mother-in-law appeared confused, indicating that Raphael hadn't informed her about his layoff. Pressed further, Raphael finally admitted to being laid off from the company. Apologies and explanations ensued, with Raphael justifying his actions by relying on my income for financial stability. My mother-in-law, shocked at the news, openly expressed anger toward Raphael for not finding a job yet. Why did you keep quiet about this? What are we going to do now? She scolded him. Raphael assured her that my income would suffice for the time being, causing my mother-in-law to label him as worthless for not actively seeking employment. Fed up with Raphael's excuses, I couldn't believe that I had ever thought of supporting him. When my mother-in-law suggested I come back, I vehemently rejected the idea, considering all the mistreatment I had endured. Their unexpected visit had turned into a heated argument, revealing the truth about my mother-in-law pouring boiling water on me. Raphael was shocked to learn about this incident and confronted his mother. "Why did you do that?" he asked her. She admitted to the act, attributing it to my ignoring her. The revelation sparked a heated exchange between Raphael and his mother, prompting me to intervene and urge them to take their arguments home. Realizing the impact of their loud arguments on someone else's house, my words prompted a change in their attitudes. Previously assertive and bold, they now pleaded with me to come back, promising that they wouldn't cause any harm again. Despite their pleas, I saw through their intentions. Raphael's promise to find a job seemed insincere, and my mother-in-law's assurance not to cause trouble appeared dubious. I voiced my skepticism, stating that their words were pointless and that they would only take advantage of me. Their silence confirmed my suspicions, and I left them in the living room, heading to my room, leaving them to contemplate their actions. When I returned to the living room 5 minutes later, they were still sitting in silence with their heads down. Frustrated by the prolonged silence, I questioned, "How long do you plan to stay quiet? It doesn't matter to me anymore." Instead of a response, Raphael signed something. I had handed him a pre-filled divorce form with my name on it. Surprised by the document, Raphael looked utterly confused. I bluntly explained, "Can't you see it's a divorce form?" I'm done with someone who won't find a job and didn't even contact me after I went back to my parents' house. Do wait, please. This is too sudden, Raffle protested. I found his stubbornness irritating, as he seemed oblivious to the fact that his actions were the root cause of our problems. Unmoved, I affirmed, I've made up my mind. My decision to divorce you won't change, no matter what you say. Raphael, still in disbelief, questioned if divorce was too harsh. Coldly, I responded, I don't think so. It's your fault. I directed the same coldness toward my mother-in-law, who was partly to blame. Resigned to the situation, Raphael signed the divorce form, warning me not to regret it. However, I felt a sense of relief, and I asserted that the one who might regret it was Raphael. I'll submit the divorce form. I don't want any compensation. Just go home, I declared, finalizing my divorce from Raphael. Though it may have seemed harsh, it was necessary to escape the harassment from my mother-in-law and Raphael's unemployment. 2 weeks later, while relaxing at my parents' house, I received a call from my ex-mother-in-law. She informed me that the electricity and gas had been cut off and questioned if I had done something. I explained that I had stopped paying for Raphael and her living expenses. Hoping for my assistance, she asked if I could cover it just for the month. I found her request absurd, considering we were no longer a couple and didn't live together. I firmly declined, suggesting she ask Raphael for help, as he had promised to find a job. Unable to comprehend my refusal, she pleaded for help, playing the ex-wife card. However, I remained firm, ending the call and blocking her number. Finally, I severed ties with both my ex-mother-in-law, who constantly harassed me, and Raphael, who had proven to be unreliable. Life at my parents' house became peaceful, and I focused on rebuilding my life. Months later, while checking stock charts on a holiday, I received a message from Raphael. He apologized for everything, acknowledging his reliance on me and the recent job at a factory. Despite the apology, I had no intention of getting involved with them again. Raphael mentioned his mother's continued harshness and expressed a desire for me to come back. Reading the message, I believed reconciliation was unlikely. I blocked Raphael's number. 6 months after the divorce, I started dating a man introduced by a friend. He was reliable, treated me well, and despite the age difference, we connected. While marriage was not on the immediate horizon, I cherished the happy times we spent together, focusing on the present and leaving the past behind. Since we'll be departing from this place today, could you please relocate? We'll also cover the $473 monthly loan. With my daughter on the way, we no longer require your assistance. All right then, please take care of everything from now on. Despite the substantial support we provided to our in-laws, they easily shifted their trust to the younger sister. As I packed my belongings at the entrance, I shared something crucial with them. By the way, there seems to be a misunderstanding. The monthly loan repayment is— As I spoke, their faces turned pale in shock. My name is Emily, a 35-year-old office worker. I've been married to Tom for 3 years. We met through a mutual friend who believed we'd be perfect for each other, and that intuition proved correct. Tom and I were drawn to each other from our first conversation. Tom felt the same, and we started dating. 2 years later, he proposed, and I happily accepted. Our families supported our marriage, and we had a wonderful wedding attended by many. After our honeymoon, we began our life together, sharing household chores and enjoying a peaceful, stress-free life. Tom, having lived alone for a long time, was a great cook, which was a huge help. We cooperated in all household tasks, and we were grateful for each other's company. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye, and our bond remained as strong as when we were newlyweds. However, a significant event occurred when Tom's father fell seriously ill. We rushed to the hospital, and after a week of tests, he was released, but concerns about a recurrence lingered. Recognizing that they might not handle another emergency, Tom proposed the idea of living together. "What if we lived together with my parents?" he suggested. It was an expected proposal, and I agreed. We quickly discussed the idea with our in-laws. Live together, Tom's mother inquired. It's not a bother at all, I reassured. Emily and I are worried about both of you. Thank you, both of you. Our in-laws, teary-eyed and grateful, accepted our offer, reflecting their underlying anxiety. We promptly moved in with them, and the mother-in-law, understanding that both of us worked, took the lead in household chores. Thanks to her, we could focus on our jobs, and the father-in-law, now retired, spent his days resting at home, which significantly improved his health. Life was joyous, and we all got along wonderfully without any issues. However, our in-laws eventually made a certain proposal. I've been thinking about this for a while. How would you feel about building a new two-family house? The father-in-law suggested. But this house isn't particularly spacious or comfortable for 4 adults. If Tom and Emily have children in the future, it'll be even smaller, the mother-in-law explained. Considering the future, I've been thinking of building a bigger house where we can live comfortably for the rest of our lives. However, it's not something we can afford with just my savings. We will need to discuss and decide together. Tom and I were surprised by the proposal, but we thought it wasn't a bad idea. While the current in-laws' house wasn't too small, it wasn't particularly spacious or comfortable either. Long-term living there might lead to stress building up between us. Perhaps buying a new house where everyone can live comfortably is a good idea. After discussing it with Tom, we decided to go along with the father-in-law's proposal. Subsequently, the 4 of us visited real estate agencies to explore various properties. We considered making it barrier-free for our in-laws and ensuring there were plenty of rooms for future children. Ideally, the new house should be in a safe area, close to both a hospital and a train station, with easy access to grocery stores. Considering everyone's requirements, it seemed like it might be pricey. However, if we were going to live there for the rest of our lives, we didn't want to compromise too much. Every family member felt the same way, so with determination, we decided to build our dream house, even if it cost a lot. After some time, our new home was finally completed. The exterior and interior were both new and beautiful, lifting our spirits just looking at it. This is really amazing. I can't be sick anymore. I want to stay healthy and live here for as long as possible. The in-laws expressed their joy. My husband and I were equally excited, realizing that this would be the house that would be with us for our entire lives, even when we have kids. I want to play catch in the garden and have barbecues. That sounds great. Let's make lots of family memories here. We were overflowing with excitement and joy. Living in the house turned out to be truly comfortable, and it felt like the pinnacle of happiness. Being in a comfortable home made me even more enthusiastic about my work. Subsequently, my work went very smoothly, and both my public and private lives were fulfilling. I genuinely felt grateful for buying this house. The months passed in the blink of an eye, and 2 years had passed in this house. We continued to have a good relationship with our in-laws as always, believing that the days ahead would be filled with happiness. However, at least in this place for life in our new home, something unexpected happened. It was when the sister-in-law and her husband visited our new house. While this really is a nice house, it's not fair that only you guys get to live here. What are you talking about? We discussed and decided to buy this house with our parents, but I can't help but feel envious. When we were still living in a cheap winter, it feels like you're living beyond your means. The sister-in-law often visited our house during holidays and always expressed her envy. Every time, she would accuse us of being unfair. We've been paying the mortgage for this house, and it's quite a hefty amount every month. We're living within our means, earning enough to pay for this house, so there's no reason for her to complain. If we were to live here with the in-laws, it would be so much fun, don't you think? What? Can you even afford the mortgage for this house? My husband and I exchanged a glance. The sister-in-law probably just blurted out without giving it much thought. However, her careless words started to move my in-laws' hearts. It would be lovely if Kana could move and live here together. Yes, it would liven things up. Hey, What are you two talking about? Haven't we been living together all this while? Come on, I was just saying. Exactly. There's no need to panic, right? Ha ha ha. While the in-laws tried to brush it off, it was evident that they were enticed by the idea of living with the sister-in-law. The in-laws seemed to have a particular affection for her, even more so than for Tom. She is a beauty with delicate features and looks like a doll from her childhood. Being 4 years younger than Tom and born when the in-laws were older, they doted on her even more. This pampering led her to become quite spoiled, and Tom had to deal with her demanding nature. Having heard all this from Tom, I was always wary of my sister-in-law. For a while after we got married, Tom and I were both caught off guard because she didn't seem to be giving us any trouble. However, recently, she has been increasingly eyeing our new house. It seems she frequently visits the house during the day when we're at work. Oh, Emily, you're back. Then I'll be leaving now. Ha. I wish you'd stay a bit longer, but Tom and Emily might find it inconvenient. I don't think it's a nuisance. You might say that, but it's evident in your eyes and behavior. Unwanted guests should leave quickly. See you, Mom and Dad. Take care. When the sister-in-law left, the in-laws were visibly upset. They looked as if they wished she stayed longer. Even though they didn't voice their feelings, their faces and attitudes spoke volumes. Feeling out of place, I usually retreated to my room after work. When Tom came home, we head to the living room for dinner. The atmosphere around the dinner table grew more and more tense, with longer silences. Tom began to notice the change and started to realize that the sister-in-law was the cause. Around the time our relationship with the in-laws started to deteriorate, the sister-in-law finally made her move. One holiday, Tom and I went shopping in the morning. When we returned, there were unfamiliar shoes at the entrance. We exchanged glances, wondering if something was amiss. Then, the mother-in-law approached us from the living room. You're finally back. We need to talk. The mother-in-law's tone was different than usual. As we entered the living room, the sister-in-law and her husband were there. Ah, you're finally here. Kana, what's going on? From today, we'll be living here, so please leave. What? Tom and I were taken aback by her sudden declaration. What is she thinking, moving in today? Hold on, it's ridiculous to say that all of a sudden. It's not sudden. We've discussed this with Mom and Dad for a long time, the sister-in-law replied confidently. Is it true you discussed this with them? Tom and I knew the in-laws were swayed by the sister-in-law's words, but we had no idea things had progressed this far. Kana and her husband said they'll take care of us from now on. I'll do the housework and even care for you when needed. Please rely on us, Mom and Dad. If our daughter is here, we don't need you anymore. A daughter-in-law who doesn't do housework or have children is no match for Kana. What? I was deeply hurt by their words. Seeing my shocked face, the sister-in-law smirked. We'll pay the $473 monthly loan. Okay. Huh? $473? It's a great deal to live in such a nice house for that. Tom and I were dumbfounded. The in-laws were already planning to kick us out. After such treatment, we couldn't continue living there. Is that settled? We can't leave immediately. Could you give us at least a week? We need to find a new place. Fine. Ah, you're looking forward to living with Kana and her husband from today. The in-laws looked disappointed the sister-in-law, but she and her husband were extremely happy that we decided to leave. Calm down, Mom and Dad. The house isn't going anywhere. I'm looking forward to a week from now. The in-laws and the sister-in-law's family were thrilled to drive us out. Did Tom and I seriously consider co-living with such people? We quickly arranged to view rental properties and moved out within a week. The day to leave our home arrived. Please take care of everything from now on. Don't ever get involved with us or come to this house again. Their words were harsh. We had supported the in-laws so much, and they switched allegiance so easily. Now we can finally live with Mom and Dad in this house. Living comfortably in this house with Conant is like a dream. We got rid of the nuisance after all. Our in-laws and sister-in-law kept insulting us until the last minute we were leaving. Little did they know they would face repercussions after this. Well, it's none of our business anymore. As I gathered our belongings and approached the entrance, I shared an important piece of information. Oh, by the way, it seems there's a misunderstanding about the monthly mortgage payments. It's $1,825 every month, okay? Make sure you understand that. What? Isn't the loan just $473 a month? At my words, their faces turned pale all at once. Hold on a second. Isn't the loan just $473 a month? You misunderstood, didn't you? This house is under our father's name, so the loan is contractually agreed to be paid off through a debit from Dad's account. Emily and I were planning to live in this house for the rest of our lives, so we told him he wouldn't have to pay. We were bearing all the costs. So I was transferring $473, and Emily was transferring $1,352 to our father's account every month. I guess Father only remembered how much Emily puts in his account each month. Moreover, we split the living expenses equally. Our parents probably never thoroughly checked the cost and assumed it wasn't a significant amount. What? No way. We can't pay $1,825 a month. We can't even cover the living expenses on top of that. How can Emily afford to contribute so much? I don't know how you perceive me, but I'm department head at a major corporation. I earn quite a lot. What? Emily earns much more than I do. As the in-laws looked shocked, Tom continued, It's simple. In-laws were unaware of this. Well, we've decided to cut ties with you, so it's up to you to support our parents from now on. No way. Emily, Tom, wait. We were wrong. Let's live peacefully together like before, okay? What? Mom and Dad, are you planning to abandon us? You guys can repay the loan, can't you? If that's the case, shouldn't you live with those who can? That's not fair. Dad told me the loan was only about $473. That's why we came here. We've already canceled our previous house. That's not my problem. Isn't this mess because you wanted to move in with us in the first place, right? Your husband earns very little, doesn't he? But you always said family is more important than money and pampered me. When our livelihood is at stake, all of that doesn't matter. The quarrel between the in-laws and the sister-in-law was unbearable to watch. Well, we're leaving. Wait, regardless of what you say, we will never associate with you again. With that, Tom and I left the house and moved into our rented room. Despite the numerous messages from the in-laws, we ignored them all. According to our neighbors, the in-laws and the sister-in-law's family had no choice but to live together. However, they couldn't pay the loan and eventually had to let go of the house. When they sold the house, a considerable debt remained. Even after using the father-in-law's early retirement benefits for repayment, they still fell short. Sadly, they now live in a cheap, small apartment, all working full-time and part-time jobs to repay their debt. Apparently, the sister-in-law's husband didn't want the burden to fall on him, so he ran away. If only the in-laws had continued living peacefully with us, they wouldn't have faced these hardships. But again, it's none of our concern now. On the other hand, Tom and I found our rented apartment much cozier than anticipated. We plan to stay here for a while and save money, living happily as our savings grow at an incredible rate. We believe it's essential to save as much as we can for the future while still enjoying our lives with the occasional luxury. We aim for a happy life together in the years to come. Move out. You're obstructing a pregnant woman gently caressing her belly, Alicia instructed. I pondered Alicia's comment, wondering if pregnant women truly displayed a kinder expression. Observing the malice on Alicia's face, I shot a quick glance at David. You can sleep in the storage room, Alicia suggested, and David concurred. My lifelong love for him waned instantly, though a touch of sentiment lingered, leaving me somewhat melancholic. All right then, I replied, and in response, David happily took Alicia's hand. Alicia gazed dreamily at David, and witnessing their intimacy replaced my melancholy with anger bubbling up from within. I'll leave by tomorrow, yeah. Oh, maybe you should stay out tonight after all. This is now mine and Alicia's home, David proclaimed joyously. I nodded slightly before exiting the house, contemplating what lay ahead and cracking a smile. My name is Catherine Taylor. I'm a 46-year-old housewife. Before marriage, I worked intensely, but that was over 20 years ago. Nowadays, I enjoy daily chores and sipping coffee, just an ordinary middle-aged lady. But my hobby is investing. I've been doing it since before marriage. Recently, I've been earning significant dividends, treating myself to lavish hotel brunches and spa visits, leading a pretty elegant life. My husband, David, is 40 years old, a salesman for a major company. He's gained quite a bit of weight, and frankly, he's been rather smelly lately. But he's good with words, given his profession. He may look big, but I love him. I felt he should probably lose some weight for health reasons, but he had this cute, mascot-like appeal, so I didn't see the need to force him into a diet. David and I have a daughter, Emily. She inherits David's features. Slim, almost model-like in beauty. Not just in appearance, she's academically top of her class and excels in sports, even making it to national competitions. She's also humble and works hard. It feels like we, the geese, gave birth to a swan. Both David and I dote on Emily, and we've often been told we're overprotective. David has a bit of a weak spot for younger women, but he chose to marry an older woman like me and cherished our family. So I thought a little wandering gaze here, and there was inevitable. We lived in a condo we bought around the time Emily was born, but it was getting old, and they were considering raising the maintenance fees. Recently, amidst all this, Emily decided to share an apartment near her college. At the same time, one of my relatives approached us about inheriting a now vacant house. David and I decided to renovate that house and move there. But who could have known that this would cause issues between David and me, which have been smooth sailing up until then? The condo we had was a 4-bedroom, including a guest room, but the new house is just 2 bedrooms. Although it's smaller than before, considering our retirement, we made it a single story, and it's been very comfortable. One of the rooms, which serves as a study and a guest room, can be divided to make an additional room for Emily if she ever comes back. David started coming home late every night to work dinners, and somehow always found reasons to go out, even on weekends. Sleeping next to David, who would come home reeking of alcohol and cigarettes, was unbearable for me, even if we had separate beds. Because of that, even though we originally shared a bedroom, I've been sleeping in the study ever since we moved. When it came time to send out moving announcements, I mailed letters to various places. David isn't good with that sort of thing. So I took the initiative to send letters on his behalf to his family and relatives. As for me, since my parents have passed away, I simply wrote a brief note and sent it to friends and relatives on my mother's side. I haven't been in contact with any relatives from my father's side because of my half-sister, Alicia. Alicia is my half-sister, 14 years younger than me. When I was in 7th grade, my mother passed away, and about 6 months later, my father remarried. Alicia was born to him and his new wife at the time of their marriage. Alicia was already 2 years old, so I initially thought it was a union of 2 families with kids. About 5 years into their marriage, my father and his new wife were involved in an accident and never returned. At their funeral, relatives from my dad's side told me that he and his new wife had been childhood friends, and everyone had always thought they would end up together. However, my mom had set them up through her boss, and my dad felt he couldn't refuse, leaving his childhood friend out in the cold. To think that behind their smiles, my dad had a child with his second wife was a huge shock to me. Every time we had a family gathering, Alicia's favorite foods were served. She had brand-name clothes, and she got the biggest room all to herself. If she said she wanted to go somewhere, they'd take her immediately. Meanwhile, I was burdened with all the chores, from preparing meals to doing laundry. I had to work part-time jobs, and all the money I earned was taken away. I also had a small storage room under the stairs, and I had to beg for even basic necessities. By the time Alicia was in elementary school, she had heard about my mom from the relatives and started looking down on me. I worked several part-time jobs to save money and finally moved out. It was impossible for me to harbor any positive feelings towards Alicia, and I never told her about my marriage or that I had a child. A few weeks after moving, I was having tea and relaxing when the doorbell rang. When I answered, a man's voice mumbled delivery, and on the screen was a person looking down. I thought maybe David had ordered something and opened the door, only to be left speechless. "Oh, Alicia, why are you here?" "Hi, sis. Long time no see. Just thought I'd drop by," Alicia said while wearing the hat I saw on the intercom. She wasn't a delivery person, but my half-sister. Without waiting for a response, she walked past me, entered the living room, and sat down on the couch. I followed her in a hurry, stood in front of her, and looked down. "I figured you wouldn't open the door if you knew it was me, so I used a recorded voice. That's just low." "Geez, you're scary." I raised my voice at Alicia, and she feigned fear in an exaggerated way. However, it was clear she was just putting on a show, and the proof was that Alicia had a smirk on her face. "I came for a visit," Alicia said, speaking nonsense, getting a cold response from me. Yet she grinned and started explaining the reason for her unexpected visit. "But sis, you never even told me where you live. I got married, but my husband is always on business trips, and it's getting boring. Plus, once my belly starts getting bigger, moving around becomes a hassle, right? Everyone told me to come stay with you. Just go home. I don't even want anything to do with you." "Well, too bad. I already came here planning to stay with you." Listening to Alicia's audacious words only irked me further. Under my breath, I muttered, "Typical of a kleptomaniac's daughter." Hearing that, my anger reached its peak. "Get out. I never want to see your face again." "What's all the fuss about?" "People outside can hear you," David said. I was at a loss for words, surprised by David's unexpected return at such an odd hour. As I struggled to explain, Alicia stood up and walked over to David, intertwining her arm with his. David didn't seem to mind. In fact, he looked quite pleased. "Oh, Alicia here. Welcome, David. My sister was being mean. I thought it'd be nice to stay with you until the baby is born. But is that okay?" "Of course. I'd be thrilled if you're okay with it. You can stay as long as you want." I stood there in disbelief, silently observing the exchange between David and Alicia. The intimacy they shared seemed more like that of lovers than mere siblings-in-law. "David, what's going on?" I managed to utter, but he dismissed me, accusing me of being jealous of my cute little sister. His words left me speechless, considering I had confided in him about my family situation before our marriage. "We have a spare bed in the guest room. You can stay there," David offered casually. Alicia seized the opportunity, expressing her desire to sleep in the same room with him. Their mushy conversation gave me a headache, and as they went to the bedroom arm in arm, I couldn't shake a bad feeling. Peeking into the room after several minutes, I discovered them embracing each other, living out what felt like a dream for Alicia. "The baby is thrilled, too, living with Daddy," Alicia exclaimed, dropping the bombshell that David was the father. As they kissed, I watched through the crack in the door, tears streaming down my face. From that day on, they treated me like a housemaid. I complied, but silently began gathering evidence against them, contemplating divorce. One day, Alicia arrogantly demanded I leave the room, claiming she, a pregnant woman, needed space. The spiteful look on her face contradicted the gentleness usually associated with expectant mothers. Looking at David for support, he sided with Alicia, causing any lingering feelings I had for him to vanish. Still, a touch of sadness remained as David happily took Alicia's hand, sealing my decision to leave. "I'll leave tomorrow," I declared, prompting an elated David to suggest I find somewhere else to stay that night. "This is now my and Alicia's home." I subtly nodded. leaving them to enjoy their laughter while they could. Stepping outside, a grin formed on my face as I contemplated what lay ahead. That night, I checked into a hotel, making plans for the next phase. The following day, I scheduled a moving company and headed to City Hall to start anew. Excitement and thoughts of newfound freedom kept me awake, but my spirit remained high. To my surprise, upon returning home, I found the moving company already confused, as the house appeared empty. A small box with a note greeted me, containing some of my cherished belongings carelessly thrown in. Adding insult to injury, David's wedding ring lay at the bottom of the box. Anger surged within me as I discovered the house in disarray, with evidence of David and Alicia's escapades. I led the movers to pack their belongings, then found the note on the dining table announcing David and Alicia's 6-day trip abroad and requesting the house to be cleaned. The note mentioned that the divorce would be finalized upon their return. David's utter self-centeredness left me dumbfounded, but his absence made executing my plan much easier, and secretly grateful that I had the movers pack all my belongings, I left David's wedding ring on the kitchen counter before departing the house. After some contemplation, I purchased a place near Emily's university, which happened to be on sale. The one-bedroom apartment was cozy, and I cherished the solitude it offered. On the day David and Alicia were set to return, my phone incessantly rang. Without checking, I knew it was them. Answering with a nonchalant hello, I was met with David's frantic voice demanding an explanation. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted. Remaining calm, I replied, "What do you mean? What's going on?" David, fuming, informed me that the house was gone. Bursting into laughter, I explained, "Well, it was my house, and if I'm not going to live there, why keep it? We were living there, weren't we? Don't worry, everything's safely stored in a storage unit. I'll text you the location and access code." David demanded I bring back the house, but I retorted that it was under my name, and the money used to build it was from my investments, not a dime from him. David seemed to recall his lack of involvement when the house was built, a fact he had conveniently forgotten. Claiming the baby to be his niece or nephew, David pleaded for me to do something about the house, as Alicia was in a tough spot. I informed him that I had known about their relationship since Alicia barged into our house. I had been gathering evidence, including recordings from a high-end baby monitor Alicia had me buy during a fit. The monitor captured everything, even in the pitch dark. Upon revealing this, David was at a loss for words. Cheerfully, I mentioned that the mailbox might have something for him. David checked it, discovering a certified mail. I explained that it was about the payment, and there was one for Alicia too. Unfazed, I insisted it was compensation for their betrayal. Ignoring his plea to talk to his lawyer, I ended the call. A barrage of calls followed, which I ignored. My old phone, used for evidence, wouldn't be an issue if left alone. After an hour of incessant calling, David seemed to give up. The attorney reached out, sounding weary. The next morning, a relative from my father's side called on my new phone, likely having obtained the number from Alicia. Expecting scolding, I recorded the call. The relative demanded an apology to Alicia, who was pregnant, and insisted on a new house as compensation. Unyielding, I refused to apologize to the woman who had an affair with my husband. I asserted that Alicia should apologize and pay compensation. When accused of being a kleptomaniac's child, I retaliated, stating that Alicia's actions were reflective of her father's betrayal. I instructed them to relay a message to Alicia to never get involved with me again, though I doubted she would have the chance. Hanging up on the babbling relatives, I felt a refreshing release of pent-up emotions. I contacted my lawyer, determined to bring Alicia and David to justice. The thirst for revenge lingered until I witnessed the dumbfounded expressions on their faces during our discussion at the lawyer's office. Alicia appeared utterly miffed, while David wore a grumpy expression, showing no remorse. Surprisingly astounded, rather than angry at their self-centered comments, I laid out divorce papers in front of them, accompanied by another set, the marriage license, offering a reduction in compensation if they signed the latter. David snatched the pen from me and signed without hesitation. Alicia, smirking, followed suit. Placing the signed documents in a folder, I gave them a big smile. "I'll submit these to the county office," I announced. Alicia, with a dumbfounded expression, tried to argue, but I revealed that the divorce was already finalized in mediation the day before. Her lack of awareness stemmed from disregarding multiple summonses. As Alicia and David processed this information, I dropped another bombshell: the possibility of David denying the father-child relationship with the unborn child. Alicia stared in shock, and David, realizing the potential consequences, looked pale. Between compensation and child support for another man's baby, I wished them luck. However, David attempted to reconcile, citing Emily's presence. Just as he changed his tune, the lawyer's office door swung open, revealing Emily. Her harsh words stunned David, frozen in shock, while Alicia, insulted, shook with rage. Emily cut ties with David, expressing her intention to live with me, referring to Alicia as that loose woman. Unable to respond, Alicia faced Emily's verbal onslaught. I delivered the final blow, revealing David's financial limitations and asserting ownership of the house and car. Alicia's plan to extract money seemed to unravel, leaving her pale and stunned. As I left with my lawyer and Emily, I left them to their newfound reality. That evening, having dinner with Emily for the first time in a while was delightful. I filed for divorce, and around the time Alicia's waiting period for remarriage had passed, David and Alicia submitted their marriage license. The witness section bore my signature, along with Alicia's ex-husband, who had shared crucial information. News circulated that David, involved in an affair with Alicia at work, got fired for misusing travel expenses for secret getaways. He now struggles with part-time jobs. Alicia, taking care of the child, faces financial difficulties after being dumped by her boyfriend. Her attempt to sabotage my family had backfired. Meanwhile, Emily enjoys college life, and I've been leading a relaxed life with my stock dividends. Surprisingly, I've developed a closer bond with Alicia's ex-husband, who affectionately calls me Catherine. Recently, he reached out for an important talk, making me feel a bit restless as I sit in front of my vanity, my face flushed like a smitten young woman.